Eli's wife and the housekeeper here. She took one of the baby's chubby hands. And this is Travis.
Nice to meet you both, he said. Geordie had warned him about all the babies. It seemed 2 of the 3 cowboys had just gotten married and had children, so he could expect lots of diaper talk. He didn't mind, not really. As long as they left him alone and his thoughts stayed clear, he was fine with as much diaper talk as the next person. So he smiled at her. But that smile faded when more dogs crowded the doorway around their legs. He'd forgotten to ask about dogs. It made sense that there were dogs, of course. The few YouTube videos he'd watched about ranching to prep for his job showed that there were cattle dogs that helped out, rounding up strays and chasing off predators. It hadn't really occurred to Jason that there'd be so many at the Price Ranch, though, and that each one would feel like a knife in his gut. He missed his service dog something awful. Chuck had been more than just a companion while he readjusted to civilian life. He'd been a lifesaver. He'd known when Jason was about to panic and had steered him out of areas that might have triggered his PTSD. Without Chuck at his side this past year, he felt lost. At first, he hadn't wanted to replace his dead friend, but after several triggered events and lost jobs, he'd made inquiries about a new service dog. Chuck had been gifted to him by a charity when he'd first been diagnosed with PTSD. Getting a second dog wasn't so easy, though. Turned out they cost tens of thousands of dollars, and the wait was more than a year. He'd just have to suffer through on his own until he could afford one, which was another reason why he needed this job. He rubbed his mouth and did his best not to look at the tails wagging with delight at the sight of him. Instead, he focused on what Eli was saying. They all lived in the sprawling ranch house, it seemed. As he went inside, he took careful note of his surroundings. The house had a log cabin feel to it despite the size, with rustic decor and woven rugs. There was an enormous plaid couch in the main room and several sitting chairs. A huge Christmas tree took up the far corner of the room across from the fireplace, and stockings were hung over the large fireplace. Christmas carols played softly in the background. It seemed very domestic and charming, but he still scanned it twice to make sure there were no hidden corners as far as he could see, no shadowy places where an enemy could hide. Habit. As they entered the living area, he met another woman with bright red hair named Annie, who had a baby as well, and more dogs at her feet. Her husband, Dustin, was out moving the herd, and Jason was told that another cowboy, old Clyde, had been here for the past 40 years, but he'd recently gotten married to his sweetheart in town, Hannah, and had moved into Painted Barrel proper to help her with the inn. It'd just be him and Eli and Dustin ranching over the winter, and they'd get a greenhorn or 2 to help over calving season. He nodded and pretended to look like he knew what they were talking about. All the while, the bright smiles of the women and the dogs underfoot were eating away at his bravado. He avoided looking at any of them, hoping they wouldn't see the lies on his face. "So, where did you ranch before?" Eli asked him. Damn, it was a question he knew would come up, but he still wasn't ready. "Quarter Circle in Kansas," Jason said, making up a lie. He'd passed by the places he'd driven, and it seemed as good a place as any. Truth was, he'd never ranched a day in his life. But when Geordie had called and said he was joining the Navy and asked if he knew anyone that wanted a ranching job, Jason had jumped at it. He might have lied a little about his experience. Or, okay, a lot. The lie didn't seem to be setting them off yet, though. Eli grunted, arms crossed as he nodded. "Can't remember. How many heads did they have?" Of cattle? Jason thought for a moment about what would be a good answer. 1,000. That sounded like a decent number. How many cattle did a productive ranch have, after all? When Eli's brows rose, he knew he'd messed up. "This should be easy for you, then," was all he said. "We run about 400. "Great," Jason said, and he felt like a fraud. Eli pointed at Jason's leg. "Noticed you have a bit of a limp. Is that going to be a problem?" This was more comfortable territory, oddly enough. Jason rubbed his thigh. "I took 5 bullets in Afghanistan in an ambush. One tore my ACL pretty bad. The limp doesn't mean it's not working, though." He smiled to put them at ease. "Oh, my goodness," Annie breathed, holding her baby closer. "What an ordeal. Thank you for your service, though." He nodded, doing his best not to look at the dogs that crowded nearby, eager for attention. "My old injury won't be a problem, I assure you.